Right, I think we'll make a start. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We're going to be demonstrating the new UKRI Studentship Data System. So I'm Emma, I'm in the central UKRI Talent and Skills team, and I've been working on this project for around the last 18 months or so. And I'm joined by my colleague, Shirley, who's a business analyst, and she's going to be leading on the demo of the system. So we're going to be running through the operational steps for each of the functions within the system, demonstrating how to use it. We have a range of attendees on the webinar today, and this is primarily going to be aimed at the external research organisation actions and activities that you'll be completing. I do just want to caveat that the demonstration is using the UAT site, so not all the questions and screens will be exactly as you will see them on the live site when we launch, and some of the links might not work as expected, so just to bear that in mind as we're working through the demo. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please do add any questions into the Q&A tab on the screen. These can be voted through the presentation, so and then we can go through some of those when the demo is finished. We have also had some questions submitted as part of the webinar registration, and where possible, we've tried to answer those questions within the demo itself as we work through it. The webinar will also be recorded and will be available for you to view after the session, and we will send out a link when it's all ready to view. So just as some background, as you'll be aware, UKRI are transitioning from GES onto the funding service, and as part of the transition, there was a need to create a replacement for the Studentship Details functionality in GES. It's really important for UKRI to capture this information on our doctoral investments and the people and skills that we're funding. So this system is separate to the funding service and doesn't link into GES, it's standalone. So there will be separate user accounts and logins required. And we've been working with research organisations to get nominations for lead account holders that can then process and manage their users within their institutions. However, we have designed the service to try and look the same as the funding service, to kind of provide a simple, familiar interface for those colleagues that will be working across the funding service and the Studentship Data System. We undertook a review of all the data that were being requested with an aim to try and reduce the amount that we were collecting and make it clearer what is needed. And I hope that you will see this as we move through the screens and the questions that we're asking. Just in terms of the launch, so we are on track for our November launch date. The project team are working currently on the final tests, and more information on the launch will be issued as soon as possible. And just to reiterate that GES shouldn't be used for creating any new student records or updating any existing records, as that data won't be migrated into the new system, so those changes won't be pulled across. I would like to thank the internal and external participants that have taken part in both the user research through the design stages and the user acceptance testing that's recently taken place. They've really helped to shape the system that we'll be sharing with you today. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Shirley, who's going to start the demo.
Thanks, Emma. So, good morning, everybody. Just to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. So as Emma has given some context, this is a UAT environment. So I'm hoping this demonstration is going to go well. Yeah, if anything might, think, well, we've never select that piece of data, then, forgive me, I'm less experienced as what you folks do in the research organization area. So yeah, but if you could bear that in mind. So depending on the permissions that you would be assigned as a user for your organization, when you log in to the system, you will have a dashboard, but in terms of what is shown here will depend on what that user role is that you've been assigned. This is the highest level permissions that I've got here that I'm demonstrating. So if you, for example, have got the lead account holder role, this is what you'll be able to see. And from this point, you can, hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory as to what you can do. Starting from managing the users in your account, in your research organization rather, you would select manage users, and you can either select find all the records, or you can add add a new user. If you select find, it'll list all the user accounts in your in your organization, and will provide the role and the department's access that they've got and their status. And at this point, you can actually change that any details within here regarding their role. So this is how you would do that. And you might need to be able to, might have to resend the invitation to the to log into the system, because that, when the account is set up, it is a time restricted invitation that people have to select that link. If you need to set up a new user, you would go to here, you would add your user. And you would just and you would add your email address, and here you would assign the role. So going down the list is the level of permissions reducing as you go down the list. So this would be the highest level. You've got an admin user account, and view user. So depending on what this person needs to do, you would select that role. And we are providing some information as to what the actual functionality is that each of these roles can actually carry out. So I'm going to select this person just as the lead RO user. You can have more than one lead RO user, and we do advise, strongly invite you to do that, because it mitigates the risk of, if somebody is only, if you only got one lead RO user, then you might be at risk in terms of the administrative access to your system, to your organization. You can select which departments they have access to, and then save and continue. The council access, again, which councils in relation to the grants that this person needs to have access to. I'm going to select all grants, and if you needed to select just the specific number of grants, then it provides a list for you to select. Select update. And at this point, it gives you a summary, and you're able to amend anything that you might have made a mistake on, or you can just save and continue. And that confirms that your user account has been created. And this would generate the invitation email to that user, and then they would click on the invitation link that is sent to them. So that's how you set up and manage the users in your organization. In the manage account, this is your personal details for your account on the Studentship Data System. And the only thing you can actually change here is your name. If you changed, if say you got married and your email address was changed, because this is your unique identifier and the way that the system is configured, there's no way of us revalidating you as this user with just changing this email address. You would have to set up a new account to reflect the email address, but you can change the name just by selecting change here, and you could change that. So going back to our dashboard, there are a number of ways that you can look for studentship records. In this tile button here, these are studentship records that have been fully created. View incomplete studentship records. These are records that are currently in progress of being created, so they're in incomplete stage, or you can create a completely new studentship record. If you need to, if you're coming in and needing to create new studentship records, we do invite you to check these two areas here, just to see that perhaps somebody else in your team might have already started that studentship record, just to mitigate against duplicate records being made. If you select view incomplete studentship records, this displays all the studentship records that are currently being created in your organization. So they could have been started by somebody else in your team, and you can have a look down here. As I say, this is a test system, so there's lots of data in here that might look a bit strange, but and for any one of these, you could either continue. So if you selected this, you could continue creating that studentship record. From finding studentship records, so you might want to just see if a particular student record has been created. You can search on the research organization or the training grant. It describes the search criteria up here. So if I select search, it lists all the studentship records that have been created. From here, these are all fully created. So you would actually, from this point, you would go in and edit these if you needed to. So having looked at this list, we decide, no, that our studentship record's not being created yet. So you would go to the Create Studentship Record tab here. And as you can see, you can't progress down the creation stage until the previous one has been completed. So we select student personal details. You want to search first if the student exists, and you can search on the criteria that's relevant. It'll list the student people records that are in your organization, and if these aren't any one of these is the relevant student record, you would create a new student record by clicking Create New Student Record. So I'm just going to create a fictitious student. I'm going to search for the research organization. So this is the registered RO. I'm going to register, that's it. Select their department. You can list all the departments and select whichever is relevant and save and continue. So this is the personal details now that you need to fill in for this student. You can enter the ORCID ID if you need. And these two email addresses can be the same if you don't know which the personal one is or the institutional ones. Enter the date of birth. Is the gender you identify with the same as the sex at registered birth? So just to bear in mind, the way that this question is worded is going to be updated in the next release. I know there has been some feedback from the UAT around that, so just call that out. So I'm just going to say yes, female. Student's religion, you might say we don't know. Ethnic origin, and the nationality, let's say United Kingdom. Do they have a disability or a health term condition? If they do, then you can select yes and select any one of these, or you can select no. The international fee status, I'm going to select home for this and save and continue. So that's your student people record, the personal details completed. Again, you have the option to check your answers, and you can change anything at this point. Press save and continue, and you can now progress to the studentship details section. So it's assuming that Essex is the lead research organization, and you can actually change this if you need to. If there's another organization as holding the training grant, so that's where you would change that. You'd select a scheme. Again, I'm just guessing here. I'm just using some information just to populate this. You can fill in the HESA ID if you need, and your own internal RO reference, and select the relevant expected qualification level. Select save and continue. Enter your funding dates. I'm going to, oops. If, as you can see, the expected thesis submission date has been populated by this end date here, you can go in and change this and override that. I'm going to say the student is full-time percentage and save and continue. To enter project title and project summary. And I'm going to say no to either of these two questions around the ethical question and the ATAS certificate. Save and continue. And again, you're given a summary or overview and the option to change your answers anywhere here as relevant. Save and continue, you can progress. We now reach the funding breakdown. You're going to add academic financial year. I'm going to select this year. Please ignore these defaulted values. We know that the annual fees wouldn't be £13, but these are just test data. But as soon as you enter a new academic year, these will be defaulted with the UKRI recommended annual fee and stipend rates. Again, I'm going to just enter some data. It assumes that funding from the partnerships is 0% and funding from the grant is 100%. I'm going to leave that as it is, save and return. You can add another financial year if you wish at this point, but the defaulting annual stipend and fee rates will only be populated by UKRI once a year, so you won't get that default option of those figures coming into your record. If you do enter any data in those financial years, when those fees are, those values are updated, they won't overwrite what you've already entered into that record, but you'll need to go back and update them with the correct values. So I'm only going to enter one financial year here. I'm going to save and continue. I've got the option to check my answers and save and continue. So here I'm going to select the grant. You can select list all grants, or you can search for the grant that's relevant. Again, I'm just going to select one that I think is correct for this and enter the dates that are relevant. Just making this up. And is this the lead grant? If it isn't the lead grant, then you would need to add another grant, because the system has a check in here that it always will need a lead grant. I'm assuming that this is the lead grant, and you have the option, is there another strategic grant to link to this? If you select yes, this gives you the option to search for another linked grant, similar to what we did before. So you can select list of grants and select whichever's relevant. And you can see it's brought that in there. If you do have another grant to add, this is where you would do it at that point here, add another grant. Save and continue. Again, you have the option to amend your input. Save and continue. We've now got partnerships. Does the studentship have any partner organizations? If you say no, it'll allow you to navigate straight on. But if you say yes, you select save and continue, and you would search for your partner organization. Just going to guess what this is here. Select that And again, it gives you the option to fill in the relevant information. You can enter what the collaboration type is, the total cash funding. Again, I'm just going to be guessing here. If this is 10% maybe, and funding from grant is 90 for this one. Is the project partner providing supervision? Yes or no? I'm going to say no, and save and continue. So you again have the option to complete, to revise your input before you save and continue. And then the final stage is making sure that you've made the student aware of how the data is being used by UKRI. Select that button, and at this point you would create a studentship. And that gives you confirmation, and that's your reference number. At this point, you've got some options here. You can navigate back to wherever is appropriate for you. If I go back to the home things, I just want to show you then, so you did need to edit that, a studentship record. So this is my studentship that I've just created. If I need to edit it, I would go there and select that. If there are any student personal details that need to change, so say the student already existed on the system when, obviously I know we created a new student here, but if you if that student people record already existed, but you noticed that perhaps the name was not quite right or something like that, the personal details of the student can only be edited after the studentship has been created, and it would be in this place here, on this tab. And anything else that you need to change or update would be along these relevant tabs. So you can come in and change anything along here. And when it gets to submission and or termination here, at the end of their 3-year study or whatever it is, the submission information would be entered in here. If you needing to if I just show you as well some download information that might be helpful. So you search for the studentships that you would like to download some data for. Say, okay, so I've entered Essex University here. This number here clearly doesn't match these 25, because this export 25 is actually the pagination on the screen. So if I select and apply that, it should update the she says there you go. Yeah, so it's now saying you can export these 76 records. So by selecting this, it would assuming this is the data that you require, it would download it into a CSV file format, such as this, where you can manipulate the data, or search on the data as and how you need. It's got different tabs depending on the data that's been downloaded. So that would give you all the information that you need to manipulate or report on that you require. Emma, is there anything else that you think I haven't covered that people might want to know?
No, I don't
Okay.
think. I think you've shown the main areas.
Okay, thank you.
So we've had quite a lot of questions coming in. I've tried to group them into the sections, so bear with me as we're going through, because there's more coming in. So firstly, just in terms of the user roles and the setup. So the description of the user roles and the levels of permission will be added to the system. So when you're creating a user, you will have hint text that shows you the access levels and permissions that you can have. Changes to the users departments can be done on the system as well by managing the users, and that will be for those who have access. So the lead account user who has access to manage those records can go in and update those. Only the lead RO account holder will be creating those individual user accounts, and you can have more than one lead account holder. I think there was a question about the larger institutions that might have quite a number of users that need to be set up. Lead RO account holders have been nominated, and we've been in contact with them, and many have provided a list of users that we are creating on the system currently. So that will be set up ahead of launch. In terms of the creating of the records, it is the institution that creates those records. So it could either be the lead grant holder or their partner organisation, depending on the individual arrangements between the training grant investment. Currently, the records are created on an individual basis, but we are looking at some work for a future release to look at the bulk upload function, so that there'll be something for you to look at there. In terms of the diversity questions, so these have been aligned with those collected by HESA. There was a few comments about the disability question, and that's currently being looked at in terms of the options and the way that it's answered. The gender identity question, so it's not being changed, it's just being reworded. I think currently on the system it says that it asks about your gender identity rather than the students. So we're just rewording it to make it clear that you're answering on behalf of the student rather than it's your gender identity. Student email addresses can be updated on the accounts. It's the I think Shirley alluded to the user account email addresses that can't be changed because they are linked to your user account. That's your username, your login. But student email addresses on their studentship records can be updated. Data is being migrated onto the new system. I think there were some questions about whether existing records will be pulled through. All active studentships, so up to the point that they've had their submission and their qualification details added, will be migrated. And we've done some exercises to look at the data that we've currently got. So all studentships that are linked to training grants that end on or after the 1st of January 2017 will be migrated across. So you will be able to go in when the system is live and update those records, make any changes that you need to. I think some people were mentioning that they had some changes to make, obviously, since JES hasn't been available, and they need to make some changes on those records. So we will that will be available for you to go in and edit. The financial information, there was a question about the stipend and fees and if they could be overwritten if you're giving them more or less or a different amount to what's on there. So we have set them to be pre-populated to the UKRI minimums, just for your ease for those records that they are having, that receiving the minimums. And when the new rates are set, they will be available to select and add to the record as UKRI set the rates each year. As Shirley showed, the data export allows you to pull out the information on the funding breakdowns and the information that you have added, and that will be used for your final expenditure statement exercise. And in terms of the final expenditure statement, so we've been working with funding services to contact training grant holders where the financial expenditure statement was due during this transition period between JES not being available and the new system not being up and running. And the details on the solution and the way around to submit those final expenditure statements has been circulated to those relevant grant holders. For the other grants that have ended since sort of the end of September, we've provided extensions on the system to allow the new system to be launched and a new process to be followed. So the main final expenditure statement exercise will continue through JES against the relevant training grant. However, instead of the student details pulling across from the student details functionality in JES, you will be required to download the student list and financial information from the new system and attach it as a PDF supporting document on your final expenditure statement. So you can download that report, you can edit as you need to before submitting it. A record of the students attached to the grant is an audit requirement for the reconciliation of a grant, and we can't process the submission of the final expenditure statement without that. And we are doing full guidance, how-to guides and guidance notes on all these processes so that you will have all that information when the system is launched. We've had some questions about how students know that UKRI were using their data. When a studentship record has been created by yourselves and the declaration has been accepted and confirmed, an email confirmation does go through to the student to confirm that her UKRI record has been created for them and gives them information on how we use the data and how they can contact relevant different people to have that information changed or amended as needed. I also wanted to touch on the submission rate survey and the exercise that we do to collect the submission details. So currently through JES, it's an annual exercise that takes place between October and December, roughly every year. And this is the only point in the year that we can collect that information. The rigid nature of it means that you can only submit the details through that point, and if you don't have the submission or the qualification information, you can't complete it on the survey, and it records a delayed submission and gets picked up in future years. And the historic nature of it means that it's after a couple of years it doesn't pick up, so then there's no other option for you to update or amend that information. So we've made the decision that we've included the submission information as part of the overall studentship record. So when you go into view a record and make any changes, you can there is a submission tab that you can go into and create details on the submission, including the day that the thesis was submitted, the outcome, and then go back in later and have the qualification awarded and the date it was awarded. So this allows you to enter that information at any point throughout the year when you have that information, rather than a structured 3 months where you might not necessarily have that information. In terms of then when the research councils will look at that data, we will take a snapshot at a confirmed time, and we will use that to look at the submission rates across the investments and the training grant holders. So we are just confirming the timelines for the first snapshot and when we will take that information. So we will provide more information once the system is launched about when that snapshot will be taken, and you will have lead time to complete the information for the relevant students that should have submitted in that reporting period. Shirley, I wondered, did we need to demo anything to do about the changing the records or making changes to funding end dates in the audit trail?
Yeah, we can do.
I think it might be quite good to show the audit trail for the studentship changes.
Yeah, so if I change something in here, do you mean? And then was it all the studentship details, wasn't it?
Yes.
If I change this to I don't know, so we change that to 29 and we save that to 30, say, and we put a reason in and we save and return. And then if we go to view full audit trail here, you can see that the thesis submission date is changed, and also the funding end date changed with the reason and who changed it.
So just to comment on this audit trail log, for migrated studentship records, there will be multiple entries for the same change that was made. So if a student was given an extension and you therefore changed the funding end date and the submission date, in the new system, it will show 2 entries for that. So you've changed the funding end date and you've changed the submission date. So that was just to preempt that some of the records, the audit trails might look quite long, but the changes have been multiplied due to the way that the migrations happened. I'm just going to go back through. So somebody has a question on the JES student reference number for HESA. So yes, from this reporting year, the studentship reference number will be the number that is shared with HESA. And I believe HESA have changed their guidance to reflect that. The JES reference will still be available for you to search on for existing records, but moving forward, it's the studentship reference number that's created that then will be shared with HESA. In terms of when the system's up and running, yes, we'll have a help desk, and contact details will be on the how-to guides and the videos and the training that we have for you. We will be creating a fully structured FAQ document after this with a lot of the questions and structured answers so that you can run through those as well as watching this. We did have a question before the webinar on the timelines for creating new studentship records. So when the system is launched, we would like you to prioritise the creation of new studentship records. And you'll have 6 weeks to create those, but we will confirm the exact deadlines once the launch has been, once we've launched the system. Amendments to existing records should be made by February 2026, but again, we will confirm exact deadlines once the system is up and running and it's launched and everyone has access to it.
Just seeing a question on how to
yes.
delete something, so I can show that as well.
Yep, that'd be great.
So depending on where you are in the studentship creation journey, there are a number of places where you can delete a record. So if you are if somebody's partway through in these incomplete studentship records, so you can see the delete key here. So at this point, this is just a system reference. It's not the official studentship reference record, because these records don't exist on the database yet because you haven't hit the final submission button. So these will be deleted without a confirmation question. If you go to the create journey, you can see, depending on, you can progress through here, and you've got a delete and start again key here. So if you realize, oh, actually, this is a duplicate, because I've realized that in my, you can actually, depending, at any point along this journey, you can also delete here. But if you've got a studentship record that's being fully created, obviously this is the one that I've created here, you can see you've got a delete key there. This delete option is only given to the lead R account role, so it is restricted as to who has access to do this. And you would select yes, delete. The actual deletion of this is, in the first instance, will be a soft delete, in that you won't be able to search for the studentship record on your search results, but the system's been designed to do what we call a soft delete, and this will still exist for 14 months after the data deletion. And in the how-to guides, if you suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I've made a mistake, you can put a request into the UKRI support desk to have this restored, as long as it's within the 14 months of that deletion. Okay.
Thanks, Shirley. We've had a couple of questions about the consortium and about, as lead organisations, if they can still view partner institution records. So the lead grant holder will be able to see all the studentships linked to their grant. Partner organisations within that consortium will only be able to see the studentships that are linked to their organisation. So if you are a staff member at a lead organisation, you will be able to see all the studentships that are linked to your training grant. So this will allow for monitoring. The submission process and who can submit the records is based on the access and the levels of permissions. So depending on how you want to structure the process within your institution and across your investment, the user roles can be assigned as such that you can either allow partner organizations to submit records straight away, or they can be submitted, the roles can be assigned so that only certain people can submit the records to allow for those extra checks that you might need to do. In terms of migrated records, so somebody's had a question about if a student has a record migrated, will we need to enter the answers to the questions that weren't previously asked? So not in cases for the majority of the records, but if you are editing a record and there is some mandatory information that isn't on the system, it will ask you to complete that. But it will flag that up. So it's around if there is a missing funding percentage or there is a missing I'm trying to think, Shirley, of another field that might be missing.
Can't remember.
Yeah, this is the top of my head now. Sorry, I should have pulled up the records. But there will be a few mandatory fields that have that will need to be completed if you are to edit an existing record. But it will show you those. But for the purposes of migration, we have relaxed some of the validation to allow the records to be created. But it might come up that when you're editing one, you might need to. But it won't be a standard across the board that when you suddenly log into the system, you have to make all these amendments. It will only be if you go into a record and look to edit a section and there is a mandatory field that is required, you will need to. In terms of partners, so for adding institutional partnerships with the studentship or collaborative studentships, internships, placementships, you can add multiple partners. So if they are offering a collaborative studentship and hosting a placement, you can put multiple entries in for that partner or multiple partners if there's different organizations being involved. And if the partners aren't on the system, you are able to create new records for those new partners that might not be on our database.
I had a question about transferring a studentship. Shall I show them how to do that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if the student is moving there to Cambridge, say, you would effectively go into your studentship record that's relevant and select change and change here, and you would look for the university, select it, search for the department that's relevant, and save and return, and that's effectively changed the registered research organisation. So from this point, Cambridge can now see the studentship. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Shirley. Students won't be able to access their own access the system to enter their details. It will be for the institutions and the grant holders to provide that information. Sorry, I'm just going through. So the expectation is that the records are updated at least on an annual basis. So there was a question about the annual finance update. So looking at the stipend and fees, the terms and conditions do set out that a annual check should be taken on the students and updated the records accordingly. So that could be where that ties into the update of the stipend and fees amounts for the next academic year. Bear with me, I'm just going through the questions. As I mentioned before, we will go through the Q&A tab in full and create an FAQ document to answer those. And mentioned also that the site that you saw was the UAT site, so the live site does have more hint text and prompts against the fields to make it clear what we're asking for and what should be answered for each section to make it clearer.
There was
a
question about the approval process as well once a record's been created. So do you want to speak to that, Emma?
So again, it's dependent on the user roles that have been assigned across your institution or your investment, the way that you want to work it. So the top two user roles have permission to submit the records to UKRI. There's a view only user role, which does what it says on label. And then there's another function where people can create them and edit them, but they can't submit those changes. So those changes will then, you will need to notify a user who has the access to go in and submit that record. But as I mentioned, the role types and the descriptions and what can be done for each one will be clearly labeled on the site, and lead account holders do have that information when they were setting up the nominations. And then some questions on the ATAS. So the ATAS question is actually being amended currently, and we're looking at some more trusted research and innovation questions to input into the record. So I will provide a more structured response as part of the FAQ documents when that's been finalised.
There's a couple of questions relating to supervisors. Do you want to speak to that, Emma?
Yes. So when we undertook the review of the data fields and the refresh and looking at what information we should be collecting, supervisor information was one that we had a deep discussion on, and wasn't required for our distribution of training grant funding. So moving forward, we won't be collecting the supervisor information on the system. Project title details and summary is still included. And I think there was a query about the character limit and the word limit. So we'll just clarify that on the system in the hint text and the FAQs. But you will still be adding project title and summary information. So in terms of the final expenditure statement, there was a question on if it's generated from TFS rather than the data system. So the data system, the Studentship Data System, is a separate reporting tool for the studentship records. It pulls in information on the grants that have been awarded through either GES or now the funding service to allow you to link the students to those grants. But there's no other link to the funding service or GES as it currently is. So the final expenditure statement currently, if your grant was awarded through GES, would continue through GES until a time where that moves on to the funding service. Or if you have a new grant that's been awarded through the funding service, the final expenditure statement exercise will be run through the funding service. So the Studentship Data System is a separate entity. Information will be taken from that to utilize in the final expenditure statement process, but it doesn't have a link to how the reconciliation of the training grant takes place. Likewise, if you have any grant maintenance requests for the training grant, so if it needs an extension request or a suspension for any reason, again, that would be requested against the training grant either through GES or the funding service. It isn't there's nothing to prompt any requests through the Studentship Data System related to the training grant activity. So we have previously shared with grant holders the new full list of data fields that will be collected. And there are some new fields that have been added. So for example, when you are linking a student to a training grant, if they are an associated studentship or have a link to a UKRI funded research grant, you now have the option to be able to link them to that grant on the system. So I think Shirley showed how to link them to a training grant and add that lead grant, but there is a strategic grant section that you can add the details of the research grant that they are associated with to help with the reporting. Classifications we're not requesting as part of the new system. There is a wider piece of work going on across UKRI to look at how our investments more broadly are classified. And so that's not a data field that we currently have in the system.
There was a question just about any problems and issues and queries. So there will be a contact email information given out when we declare that the system is live and ready to go. So that will be provided. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there is a not known option for the EDI questions in the personal details section. So yeah, so JES is still used for things to do with the training grant, if that's where your training grant is funded through and currently administered through. But if it's related to extensions or suspensions for the studentship, they are recorded through the new system. So if it's a studentship extension due to medical leave, family leave, for example, it would be the new UKRI Studentship Data System that you go into to update the studentship record. That is separate to the training grant extension request process that would be through either JES or the funding service. And we will make sure that's included in the guidance that we have. Yes, we can share the full list of data fields being collected as well. We haven't confirmed a launch date. We're currently frantically working behind the scenes to do all the final checks and the migration on the migrated data and the system. So we are on track for November, but we will provide more information as soon as possible in terms of when it's being launched. We have 5 minutes left. So I'm just going to go through.
Yeah, I'm looking through them as well and see if there's any questions we can answer.
Yeah, so in terms, again, in the final expenditure statement, you'll be completing that in JES, creating the totals for the stipend, the fees, RTSG, other costs that you might have been awarded, the fund headings on your training grant. And you will, where you used to have the figures pulled through from the stipends from the studentship system, that will now be a field for you to complete the total stipend cost that you're claiming, and you will be using the download from the studentship data system to provide the individual breakdown for the students. So you would export the information on the studentships with their funding start and end dates and their stipend amount that they've received over the period of the grant, and that will be saved as an attachment on the final expenditure statement with just the total figure paid out on stipends added into the higher level funding final expenditure statement return. Yes, there will be, the recording will be made available, so we will share a link with you when that's ready.
The question about sex at birth being mandatory, there is an option to say it's not known or prefer not to say, isn't there? I think.
Yes, yeah. So we have amended the questions in line with the data that's collected by HESA, so that institutions are collecting the same question set. And this will also be used in the annual report, training grant annual report templates for the applicant pool information, so that it's the same across the board. In terms of the annual reports, we appreciate that the applicant pool questions were confirmed quite late, so that you might not have been in place to have them in your systems ready for the 26 cohort recruitment cycle and the collection of data needed. But we would ask that it's available from the next recruitment cycle so that you can then report on it. But again, we will send out the full list of the diversity questions and the data fields that are being collected. We can link that in with this webinar video and the how-to guides and the training, so you've got everything together. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to thank everyone for joining today. I really appreciate it. Everyone's involvement and feedback and questions has been extremely helpful. There is a UKRI Studentship Data Project email address, which I will share with the recording to all the attendees, so that if there are any questions, comments, then you can get in contact with us and we can help you work through those. But we will put together an FAQ document based on these questions to provide that additional guidance. But Thank you ever so much for taking the time to go through that with us today. We really appreciate it, and all your feedback is very valuable. So have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.